Then, the sound of a phone ringing echoed in the room. It was Doctor's phone. One of the officers went ahead and received it before putting on loudspeaker for Doctor to hear. Doctor, we have found that all the actions that you have been taking in our hospital do not follow the code of a doctor. So, from this moment on, you are no longer an employee of our hospital. There's no need for you to resign. We fired you. Immediately after that, the call ended. Silence reigned in the room for a moment. Then, there was a rapid beeping sound from the machines that were monitoring Doctor's heartbeat. The doctor looked at it. He was shocked. He hurried forward to check only for things to go silent. What happened? The officer in charge asked with concern. The patient suffered from heart attack and high blood pressure and died, the doctor said as he looked at the flat lines running on the screen. It indicated that the heart had already stopped beating. He died? Just like that? The officers couldn't believe it. What are we going to do? One of the officers asked. Well, he was found by a mob, beaten up, rescued, and brought to the hospital. Then, he died from high blood pressure and heart attack due to being fired from work. The officer in charge responded. So, who killed him? The mob and the one that fired him. Who are we going to arrest? Both? Of course not. Get that person who fired him. He's the one who killed him by heart attack and high pressure. Got it. Have you recorded the statement? Yes, boss. It's all done. Okay, match on. Let's go and arrest that murderer. Yes, sir. Oh, wait a moment. Who was the one that fired him, and where is he? Look at how forgetful I am. Take the phone with us. That's evidence. Handle it carefully. I got it, sir. The evidence is secured. All right. Let's go and catch that criminal. Poor hospital director. He didn't think that by trying to save the reputation of the hospital by firing Doctor actually made him a murderer who was wanted by the police. On the other hand, the Alfonso family was in a mess. They couldn't handle things in the direction that they were heading at. The damage of reputation that they had suffered from being connected with Doctor through Marion, who was part of the Alfonso family, had brought them losses. Not only had several employees of theirs stopped working, there were those that had began claiming that their salaries were being delayed. Some even said that they were harassed by members of the Alfonso family who were in the upper echelons of the companies. One by one, the companies that were in charge of selling products began seeing a decrease in the number of sales. Then, the goods that were supposed to have been delivered were detained as the Port Authority wanted to confirm if the goods were defective or not. This in turn led to the delays in the delivery of the orders. Those that were supposed to receive the goods came after the Alfonso family, wanting to have them compensate them for the losses that they had suffered. The contracts were broken one after the other, and the Alfonso family had to pay for the damages that had been caused due to the failure in delivering the products. The banks and SACCOs that had ever given loans to the family came forward to ask them to pay the debts, or they would have their property seized. The banks decided to freeze all the accounts of the members of the Alfonso family and their related businesses. In this way, they would make sure that the little money that was left in the bank wouldn't be used up before they got paid. The products that were related to the Alfonso family were boycotted one after the other. The cooperation that the family had with other partners were broken one after the other. These people were not willing to be buried alongside the Alfonso family. At this time in the Alfonso mansion, Dalton was still frowning in the study room. He was looking at the information that he had received from Kevin about Jack. The information stated that Jack had bought a building that was worth $70 million. This was something that made him question if this was true. After all, how could Jack be able to afford that huge sum of money? He was still trying to find the weakness that he could exploit to make sure that Jack came back to the family. But he had been in here for over 2 hours, but he still couldn't think of something that could be used to get him back. Just as he was about to make a phone call, there was a sudden bang and the door was opened by force. Who the F***CK has no respect that he charges into my study like a mad bull? He was already frustrated. Now that there was someone who actually dared to barge into his study like that, he couldn't help but want to vent. You unfilial son. How dare you say that I don't have respect? Am I not the one that taught you what respect is? And you dare to call me a mad bull? If I don't teach you a lesson today, then I'm not Victor Alfonso. Victor, who had just entered, received the insults from his son. Being already angry only for him to be insulted, Victor raised his cane and began beating Dalton up, completely forgetting that Dalton was now an adult. Dalton, on the other hand, had never expected that it was his father who had entered like that. This was unlike him. So, he had simply thought that he could vent on the person that was coming in, who knew that he was actually inviting the old man to vent his anger on him. He had wanted to explain that it wasn't intentional, but Victor had already began beating him up. The cane that he was using wasn't made of plastic or wood. It was made out of metal. So, each strike that landed on Dalton made him hiss in pain. But he didn't dare to cry out loud, considering that his children were around somewhere. He managed to go through the pain for over 5 minutes. Feeling tired, Victor, whose eyes were already red, looked at him and began berating him again. "What did I do to deserve such a useless son? You saw that chasing your son away wasn't enough. Now, you actually dared to do something that is now threatening to destroy my family?" Dalton could understand the first mistake where he chased Jack out of the family. But what the heck with the second part? When did he even make a decision that affected the family? Could it be that the Farrell family had already announced the engagement party was going to happen tomorrow? "What happened, father? What did I do wrong?" Dalton asked. "You dare to ask again? You don't know that your wife was cooperating with a criminal? Now, the media is condemning our family, that we are a group of criminals." Victor roared in anger. Such a thing happened? Dalton was dumbfounded. "You ignorant fool. You don't even know something like that? Are you really the family head? All our businesses are collapsing. The shareholders in our companies are selling their shares at a cheap price. Goods that were supposed to be delivered have all been detained. Contracts have been broken. We need to pay back the loans that we took. All those that didn't get the goods on time are asking for the compensation for the damages that have been caused." The more he spoke, the angrier he got. In the end, Victor collapsed on the floor. He was old to begin with. For him to do such an intense activity where he spent a lot of energy, he had to get to suffer. Dalton was so dumbfounded after hearing what his father was saying. He couldn't understand how things came to this. He had thought that he was handling things well. In the end, the family was going to be ruined in his hands? Just thinking of those that had been eyeing the family business all this time, and those that he had offended to make sure that he succeeded, Dalton couldn't help but shiver. He knew that those guys would come out of the dark and try to devour the Alfonso family. Seeing his father collapsing, he forgot everything that he was thinking about and rushed forward to hold him. After arranging for the old man to rest, he stormed out of the study room furiously. "Marion, where the heck has this woman gone to? Come here right now and explain to me what is going on," he roared. Those that saw him immediately took the opportunity to slip away. None of them wanted to face the angry Dalton. Even Dalton's brothers that had always wanted to be the CEO of the Fonso Group couldn't do a thing. This would have been a good opportunity for them to take Dalton down and replace him. But now, how could they dare to take the hot potato? They would let Dalton handle the things himself. If they dared to take over the position, they would be the ones that would have to face the pressure that came with the current turbulent storm that the family was facing. After looking and asking around, Dalton was informed that Marion had left the family mansion about 6 hours ago. And since then, they didn't see her, and neither did she receive any calls. What's more, they couldn't find anything about her. It was like she had just vanished. What's even more suspicious was that Brenda had also vanished. This made many people think that the mother and daughter had already run away from the very first sign of danger. Dalton was even more infuriated. How could a woman that he had married actually cause the fall of his family? He was so angry at this point. He tried thinking of the solution to the current problem. He made several calls, but each and every call ended with his face darkening further and further. He was feeling helpless. It was at this point when his phone rang. Looking at the caller, he found that it was actually Alton. He was excited, and a hint of hope ignited in his eyes. How could he forget that he had such powerful in-laws? He received the call immediately. "Master Alton." He couldn't even finish before Alton's angry voice came over. "You dare to lie to me? You told me that he was your son. In the end, you had actually expelled him from the family. Since you dare to play tricks on me, I will make sure that your Alfonso family falls. What's more, the engagement doesn't exist anymore." Toot, toot, toot. The call ended there. Dalton dropped the phone onto the ground as he stared in front of him lifelessly as he muttered, "It's over." As chaos erupted in the Alfonso family, Jack was busy with something else. It had already been so long, yet the body-strengthening pills had yet to be produced. He was now getting impatient. After all, this was one part of his plans. If it was missing, then the private team that he had formed would be useless with the normal strength. In other words, there would be nothing special about the private team. He wasn't ready to waste his time and resources in forming something ordinary. He got out of his room and headed downstairs. He found that Jonathan and the girls were chatting about what was happening in the Alfonso family. The girls had already known that Jack was from the Alfonso family, and now they had also known that he was making them bankrupt. When they saw him coming down, they greeted him enthusiastically. Then, Celine asked, "Jack, are you intending to make the Alfonso family bankrupt? Or are you going to make their lives even difficult?" Celine didn't like the fact that these people had actually made Jack's childhood a living hell. Furthermore, she had just known that they were the reason as to why Jack's mother died earlier. In other words, they had killed her. So, for some reason, she found herself hating them just like how Jack did. But till this moment, she didn't know that Jack had already killed those that were responsible for his mother's death. Jack had decided not to talk about that at all. In any case, it didn't have any effect whether Celine and the others knew that he had actually killed those that were responsible or not. Not really. I just want them to experience despair first. Then, I will acquire all the property under their names. In this way, I can make sure that they will have nothing to depend on in the future. Jack replied as he sat opposite Jonathan. Celine nodded in understanding. She could tell that Jack was intent in making sure that the Alfonso family paid for their crimes. She too would like to see that happening. During this time, Jonathan had been one of the important people in making sure that the Alfonso family went bankrupt in a single day. That's right, it was just the previous day that they had released information about the doctor before attacking the Alfonso family after the doctor had created the hype. Denali was currently busy with acquiring the shares at a low price as the shareholders sold them. These guys were so scared to continue remaining in the same company as the members of the Alfonso family. So, they wanted to hurriedly hand over the shares to others. Since it was obvious that there would only be a few people who might be willing to acquire the shares, these guys had no choice but to suffer a loss by selling the shares at a very low price. Denali, on the other hand, was making sure that the prices of the shares was pushed to the lowest limit while at the same time. She was fanning the flames that were already burning the Alfonso family. In this way, those that were reluctant to sell the shares at a lower price would have no choice but to sell them. Otherwise, once the company went bankrupt, let alone selling the shares, they would have to pay for all the debts that were accumulating one after the other. As the group chatted, Jack continued thinking about the pills. He already had another pill recipe, the anti-leukemia pills. These were the pills that he was going to release to the market. But he was still wondering what was taking the research center so long to produce the pills. They had the ingredients needed, they had the recipe, and all those that were participating in the production of the pills were experts in their fields. And there were 12 of them. Thinking that there might be something wrong, Jack decided to ask about it. He sent a text to Denali to ask her to inquire about the production of the pills. Knowing that Jack was getting impatient, Denali immediately contacted the person that was in charge of the production to confirm what was going on. The information that she received surprised her. She really wanted to go to the capital and look at the results by herself. But, considering that she was still busy with the issue concerning the Alfonso family, she couldn't do it. She had no choice but to inform Jack about the results. After all, he was the one that had given the recipe. The production is completed, but the pills are ineffective? How's that possible? Jack asked in disbelief after he received the information from Denali. One had to know that the recipe came from the system. So, Jack was sure that there was no way that the system would give him counterfeit things. What he had received so far was a proof for that. Are you sure that they followed the steps that are required correctly? Otherwise, how can the pill be ineffective? Jack asked again. Boss, that's what they told me. They said that they had made sure to follow all the steps, and they finally produced the pills 5 days ago. But they had tried them out, but they were not working at all. Denali replied. Okay then, I'll head there to see it myself. And if the equipment is what is causing problems, You can as well inform them to purchase a higher version of the equipment if it exists. There is no need for them to save money, Jack stated. After ending the call, Jack was just about to make another call when Jonathan called him out. Hey Jack, what are you talking about? Are you researching on some kind of pill or something? Not researching. The research was already completed, and the recipe of the pill has already been produced. It is just that they are informing me that although they can produce the pills, it's like the pills are not working accordingly, Jack stated. What kind of pill are you researching anyway? Celine asked. It's a unique one. You can only know about it after you test one of them, Jack replied. Test? I'm not sick, so why would I want to test the pill? Celine was dumbfounded and couldn't help but ask to confirm. Of course you are sick. How can you not be sick? Jack said, full of confidence. Not just Celine, but everyone in the room looked at Celine. It was as if they were trying to confirm that she was actually sick. But no matter how they looked at her, they couldn't find anything wrong with her. Humph. You. How dare you say that I'm sick? I'm going to beat you up. Celine's face was flushed as she said these words. Before Jack knew it, she was already rushing towards him, ready to beat him up. Hey, how can you be so sure that you are not sick when you haven't asked what kind of disease you are suffering from? Jack couldn't fight back at all, and could only receive the weak punches from the girl. You dare to continue saying that I'm sick? How am I sick? Point out what I'm suffering from. Otherwise, I'm not going to let you go unless I beat you up and make sure that you are taken to the hospital. Celine became angry as she continued hitting Jack. When she noticed that her punches were not effective on him, she looked around and found a shoe. She was just about to continue hitting him when the door of the mansion's living room opened and Faith stepped in. Seeing Celine's actions, she couldn't help but speak. You two like flirting with each other all day long. When are you ever going to stop doing that in public? You are hurting we who are still single. Celine blushed further when she heard Faith's words. It was only at this point that she remembered that there were actually other people in the room other than the two of them. She looked at them and found that they were actually looking at her with weird expressions. She lowered her head and rushed out of the mansion. She was so ashamed to face anyone. After all, she had just lost her composure in front of so many people. Wouldn't the image that she had created collapse? Seeing that he was spared from being beaten up, Jack decided to continue with what he was supposed to. Hello, Klein. Bring the team to my mansion. We are going to Cartu City tomorrow. So, you should be here by 7 tomorrow, Jack stated. Got it, boss. Klein replied. Klein was the captain that had been selected by the others of the squad. That was the decision that they had come to after a period of time. And Klein and the others were already getting uneasy all this time. After all, since the formation of the squad, they had only carried a single mission, dealing with the goons that were blocking the store entrances. Since then, they had been idle, not having anything to do. They had thought that Jack had forgotten about them. Although it was true that they had received some of the benefits that Jack had mentioned to them before, there were others that they had yet to receive. But that was not what they were worried about. What they were worried about was the squad that had been formed to be disbanded. If it was, they would lose their advantage. What's more, they too didn't like the fact that they were receiving their income yet they were doing nothing other than idling around. Now that they had been asked out again, Klein was clearly more than happy to comply. He was waiting for the time that Jack would have a use for them again. After ending the call with Klein, Jack spoke to the system. Angel, can I have one of the helicopters delivered here? It will make things convenient for me to move around with this large group of people. It will be here in an hour at most. You know, it has to appear like there was a person delivering it. So, I will be making the arrangements for that. That's good then. Jack nodded in agreement. Guys, tomorrow I'm heading to Cartu. Who's going there with me? Jack asked. I'll be heading there with you. I have to be around you so that you can protect me. Jonathan agreed without hesitation. I will be going back to see my grandpa. He seems angry after what I told him yesterday. Wendy said. Celine will also go with you. Her friend will be coming back from abroad this week. So, there's no need for her to stay here anymore. I'll handle everything here, Faith stated. Since they are all going, I'll have to go too. Angie shrugged. She was Wendy and Celine's friend. So, if they left in Coat City, there would be no need for her to continue staying there. Okay then. The helicopter will arrive in an hour. but we will be departing tomorrow morning. So, be prepared. Jack said. He was going to go to Kartu City with more than 20 people. It was obvious that the Eurocopter could not take them all at the same time. So, he was going to use the helicopter that he had been awarded by the system as the first income reward for the security companies. Although he previously wanted the plane to be delivered by the system once the merging was completed, the current situation stated that they had to get a bigger helicopter. Or, they could as well go to Volant City and take a plane to Kartu City. But that was something that Jack didn't want. He didn't want to go through a lot of procedures and so on just to book a plane. He wanted to leave at his own convenience. If possible, he would have used the Boeing private jet. But it was still in Venture City, a 4-hour-long trip. What kind of helicopter can accommodate all of us? Jonathan asked suspiciously. You are bringing your team? Jack asked with raised brows. Of course I am. Otherwise, why would I leave them here? They are convenient in doing some of the small tasks, you know. As he said these, Jonathan gave Jack a smile that only he could understand. Jack snorted and asked, How many of them? Not many. There are only 15 of them, Jonathan stated. What are you saying, Jonathan? 15 people in a helicopter, and you are saying that the number is not big? Wendy looked at him incredulously. She couldn't believe this guy at all. Wendy had already asked her grandfather to cancel the engagement between her and Jack the previous day. She had simply stated that the Alfonso family had cheated them and that Jack wasn't there. In other words, since Jack wasn't there, they were going to replace him with another person. This made Alton angry, and that was the reason as to why he had contacted Dalton personally the previous day to inform him about canceling the engagement. On the other hand, the reason for her asking for the engagement to be broken was simply because she had realized that she had gotten the wrong person. The person that she was supposed to be engaged to was Jonathan. He was the one that had saved her. Furthermore, he was the one that she knew the most because he appeared in the area that he had saved her frequently. So, most of the times that she sneaked back to Crystal City, she would mostly see Jonathan and not Jack. The number of times that she would have seen Jack was far lower than the number of times that she had seen Jonathan. So, after some talk back in the Star Hospital when Jonathan was admitted there, she realized that he was the one that she liked her at least. Although he had yet to confirm their relationship, she was sure that he loved her, just like how she did. After all, the way that he treated her was special as compared to the way that he treated Celine and Angie. On the other hand, Jack was already in no-go zone. After all, the way that he and Celine were interacting was enough to tell her that the two of them were comfortable together. And, not wanting to cause problems for her sister, she had decided to withdraw the engagement before it was announced. What are you talking about? 15 people is such a small number of people if we start comparing the number of people that have been hired to take care of the 2 mansions here. Jonathan refuted. What has the mansion got to do with the number of people that you are bringing? Wendy blinked her eyes as she asked in confusion. It has everything to do with it. The helicopter belongs to Jack. And what's more, the mansion belongs to Jack. So, everything about the number of people that I'm bringing along has everything to do with Jack. Jonathan explained. You are not making sense at all. Wendy shook her head, clearly not understanding what Jonathan was trying to imply. On the other hand, Jack could understand. Jonathan was implying that just like the subordinates that were taking care of the mansions, his aim of having the 15 come with them was so that Jack could utilize them. He had already seen how efficient they were. So, Jack didn't think that it was a bad idea to bring them along. The helicopter can accommodate them even if you double the number. Jack stated. Ah? What kind of helicopter is that? Jonathan looked at Jack, clearly not believing his words at all. Why don't you wait for an hour and see? Jack shrugged, not willing to explain anything. Roalpha di Alpha and Nusoem. Okay then. Jonathan agreed. An hour later, the sound of a helicopter could be heard coming from outside the mansion. The group that was still chatting in the living room could already tell that this was the helicopter that Jack had said that it would be here in an hour. Since they were going to leave the following day, none of them was willing to leave the living room and check the helicopter for the time being. After all, they had found an interesting topic that they were talking about. Once they left, the flow would be ruined. About 10 minutes later, Celine entered the living room. Jack, whose helicopter is that outside? She asked as soon as her eyes landed on Jack. It's mine. It's the one that we will be using to go to Khartoum tomorrow, Jack stated. That big? Don't you already have a Eurocopter? What is the use of that big one now? Celine asked. Although she had just heard from Jack that they would be heading to Khartoum the following day, she didn't say a word because it was natural that she would be heading there as well. Her duty here was already completed, and the little that was left could easily be handled by Faith. There are more than 30 people going. So, we will need a bigger one, Jack explained. Oh, okay. Celine nodded. Although curious about who it was that was going to add the number to over 30, she didn't ask. Anyway, she would see the people the following day. After hearing the conversation between Jack and Celine, not only Jonathan, but the three ladies were curious about what kind of helicopter Jack had that could actually accommodate more than 30 people. One had to know that a helicopter had a maximum capacity that it could efficiently handle. Once the maximum capacity was exceeded, it would affect the performance of the helicopter. They were going to Khartoum City, so it meant that it would take them a long time to arrive there. They wouldn't want to be slowed down due to something like the number of passengers on the helicopter was exceeding the maximum that the helicopter could handle. The four of them got out of the mansion, completely forgetting about the interesting thing that they were talking about. They wanted to see what kind of helicopter it was. After about 20 minutes, the group came back to the mansion. Jonathan looked at Jack as he asked in disbelief, Jack, where on earth did you get that helicopter from? I bought it, of course. Or, is there somewhere that they give them out for free so that I can go and collect more? Jack shrugged as he responded, Be serious. That kind of helicopter is mainly used by the big institutions like Red Cross or the bigger hospitals. Maybe some big security companies have them as well. But for you to have one as well, this is surprising. Jonathan said as he sat next to Jack. I bought it, all right? Jack couldn't tell them that he actually received the helicopter from the system. What's more, he wondered how Jonathan would react when he knew that Jack actually had 3 of the helicopters. Is the helicopter that special? Angie asked. She wasn't the only one, as even the other girls were curious about the helicopter. After all, they knew that Jonathan's background wasn't small. For the helicopter to make him to react in such a manner, there had to be something special about it. You guys may not know this. The helicopter out there is special. It's called MilMe 26M. It's a helicopter mainly used by the big security organizations. Even the army will use this kind of helicopter. It has a large carrying capacity and can carry a lot of weight. What's even more, the helicopter out there is one of the ones that is modified for the security companies. It can deploy up to 80 troops. As for the price, it's worth over $10 million. The number of this helicopter that have been produced in the world amount to less than 500. Even my family only has one, Jonathan explained. When the girls heard the description of the helicopter, they were greatly surprised. They couldn't help but look at Jack again. They didn't know how many secrets Jack was hiding. He could afford such a helicopter. Not only was the price high, considering that the number of the helicopter itself was limited, for Jack to be able to acquire one. This explained that he was hiding too deep. The Gesta family had only one of them. On the other hand, Jack also had one of them. Didn't that mean that he might as well be of the same level as the Gesta family in terms of influence? Jack, just what are you hiding? Jonathan asked. Nothing much. It's just that the helicopter out there was bought just recently. As for where I got it, you shouldn't worry about that. You may be surprised in the future that I actually have 3 of them, Jack stated with a smile. As if I will believe it. To get one of them is already a miracle. How can you get 3 of them? Jonathan couldn't believe it. That's up to you. Jack didn't explain further. The following morning, a group of 20 people arrived at the Prince and Princess Palace. The guards at the gate already knew them, as this wasn't the first day that these people had come here. Furthermore, they were driving the Bentegas that Jack had bought. The 4 cars drove into the compound. Not long after, 3 cars arrived at the gate. Bob was surprised, but when they introduced themselves, he allowed the group in. Jack had already informed him that there would be 2 groups of people that would be coming on this day. I wonder what all these guys are here for. Are they going to go out for a mission or something? Bob wondered. He had seen the helicopter, and he could tell that it was like the one that he had seen in a movie a period back. That was a helicopter that was used by soldiers or security department. Although there were other modifications that could be used by the health sector and so on, He could recognize the one that had landed in the palace grounds. In any case, he wasn't going to be so nosy on what was going to happen. He simply went back to his post after making sure that there was nobody else that was left out. Jack and the gang had already been prepared. They were simply waiting for the 35 to arrive. When they came, the group took breakfast before they set off. Just like Jonathan and the others, the group of 35 was surprised when they saw such a big helicopter. Those that knew about it couldn't help but wonder what kind of background Jack had. In any case, Gabriel and one of Jonathan's men were going to be the pilots for the day. With the size of the helicopter, it was obvious that a single pilot would have a difficult time in handling it. The journey was going to be long. So, they had decided to leave by 8 in the morning. They had already made sure to take with them the things that they would need on the way. Food and water were some of the basics. Since they were no longer going to take a detour to Venture City and directly go to Kartu City, it would take them about 5 hours to arrive in the central province's Kartu City. The helicopter could fly at a speed of 295 kilometers per hour. Considering that it wasn't like a car where it would be held in a traffic jam, or it would have to slow down when climbing the mountains, this speed was fast enough in air. When they arrived in Kartu City, Jack and Jonathan had to look for a place to stay. Although the girls wanted to invite them to their house, Jack and Jonathan thought that it wasn't appropriate for them to go there. After all, if they did go, they would have to face the girls' parents. In the end, it would be like an introduction. Who was ready for that at the moment? None. As the girls went back to their parents' house, Jack and Jonathan decided to stay in the Cardinal Supreme Hotel. This place Jack had already booked for a month. So, there was no need for him to book another place. As for the 35, they were going to book their own rooms. Of course, Jack was the one that was going to pay for the expenses. After staying there for the night, Jack took the Lamborghini Urus that Denali had left in the hotel parking space before driving it to the Brightway Medical Research Center. Jonathan decided to go with him. They were currently in the central province. Here, it was easy for his second uncle to know his whereabouts. And just as he knew, he would definitely send more assassins his way. If they did send someone like Spider when he was still weakened, it would only lead to his death. Jack could defeat Spider without getting injured. That implied that he was strong. So, Jack was his only source of protection as long as he wasn't back to the family manor. He had also followed Jack because he was curious about what type of pill he was producing. He knew about the Brightway Medical Research Center. As for how Jack came to be the owner of the research center, that was something that he didn't know about. When they got there, he found that there was a group that was waiting for him. It seemed that Denali had informed them that Jack was coming to see where the problem was with the pill. The group welcomed him, though they were surprised that there were actually twins. In the end, Jack didn't think that it was necessary to explain anything to them and simply asked them to take him to the trial room. The trial room was located in the biggest building that had 5 floors. It was on the topmost floor, the 5th. When Jack got there, he found that there were several trial subjects there. He knew that this was normal. The research center didn't simply research about human medicine. There were other departments that dealt with other types of medicine. Just like how the test was done, they used a normal white mouse. The pill was pure white in color. Since it was true that the mouse wouldn't simply take the pill, they had to use water to make a solution that would then be fed to the mouse. The test went on. Jack and Jonathan observed from the side. Jonathan asked, "What kind of pill is that? It's so small and has no scent at all." "It's a body-strengthening pill," Jack replied. What kind of pill is that? I have never heard of a disease that requires such a pill." Jonathan asked again. "The weak can be treated by the use of this pill," Jack replied. Jonathan wanted to ask more when the results of the test came out. As you can see, the results of the pill show that the pill has no effect on the mouse. The scientist in charge of the production handed the document to Jack. Jack could see that they had tested the physique of the mouse in terms of strength, speed, and so on before giving it the pill. In the end, after 3 hours, they found that there was actually no change at all. The results were still the same. Jack frowned. He wondered what was happening here. Angel, could there be something wrong with the recipe? How can there be anything wrong with the recipe that the system gives? That's completely impossible. Then what happened to the pills? The results show that they have no effect. Jack asked, "Can't you see the mistake that you guys are making? The body-strengthening pill is meant for humans. Yet here you are, testing it on a mouse and you were expecting results? But the mouse has always been used as a test subject for drugs that are used by humans. Jack said, "Whatever you say. The body-strengthening pill is meant for humans. No matter how similar the cells or physique of the mouse are closer to that of a human, it's still a mouse at the end of the day. So, there will be no effect." Another thing to note is that you only retrieve the recipe and not the prescription of using the pills. Although it was said that a person could only take 2 pills, do you know whether the 2 are taken at the same time or at what time difference after taking the first one? Then, although it's a pill, did you ask for the method of using it? Not really. You simply took the pill, dissolved it in water, and fed it to the mouse. Even if the pill could really work on the mouse, the results would still remain the same. He had completely forgotten something like that. Although it was true that the scientists were the ones that produced the pill according to the recipe that he was given, they had not really researched the pill at all. So, they didn't know about the effect of the pill when taken. They simply knew that the pill was supposed to increase the strength of a person. Jack took a deep breath as he tried thinking about what the system had just said. He looked at the scientist in front of him. His name was Walter. He was from a big research institute and was poached by Denali. "Have you tried different methods of administering the pill to the mouse?" Jack asked. "Yes. We forced the solid pill into the mouth of the mouse. Since the pill could easily dissolve, it wasn't a problem for the mouse to take it. But the results were the same as now," Walter said. "We tried dissolving the pill with different amounts of water. In the end, there were no changes at all. We used warm water, cold water. Nothing worked even when we used hot water to dissolve the pill first." Walter continued. Jack could see just how frustrated Walter was. He was someone who likes researching. So, although he wasn't the one that had researched the pill, it was true that he was involved in the production. So, for him to see that his efforts actually bore no results, it made him so depressed. "System, where's the prescription?" Jack asked. "Do you want it here or back in the hotel?" Jack thought for a while and decided that he was going to take the prescription back at the hotel. With that decision made, Jack looked at Walter and said, "Just continue with the production of the second batch of pills. Don't worry about the effects of the pill. I will take care of it." Although Walter was confused, he still agreed and went back to discuss with his fellow scientists about what Jack had just said. Jonathan followed Jack back to the hotel without asking a question. He was curious, but seeing that the pill seemed to be ineffective, he decided not to ask. After all, what was the use of something that couldn't be used? Jack entered his room in the suite. Then, he asked the system for the prescription. Dr. Angel's body-strengthening pill intake prescription has been placed in the bedside cabinet. "Doctor? Since when did you become a doctor?" Jack was rendered speechless. "Of course I'm a doctor. Otherwise, how could I know the body-strengthening pill recipe as well as the prescription? Didn't the scientists that you hired failed after days of tests?" Jack simply shook his head and opened the cabinet before taking a piece of paper. Just like the recipe, the prescription was also written on the paper. To use the body-strengthening pills, one has to dissolve 2 of them in 10 milliliters of hot water. After 5 minutes, the solution has to be frozen till it forms an ice cube. Then, it's melted and warmed to a room temperature. It's only then that the solution can be taken. He completely couldn't understand what was wrong with the prescription. It was just to dissolve the pills in water. What was the use of using hot water, then freezing the solution, only to warm it till the solution was at a room temperature? System, what is the use of the roundabout process? Won't the end result be the same, the room temperature solution? Jack asked. That is just so as the pills can't be used by just anyone. In this way, you can control the number of people that can use the pill. In other words, even if those scientists stole the pill from you, they won't be able to use it unless you tell them the prescription. Jack was at first stunned. Then he thought that the system was really thoughtful. It had already thought of a way of making sure that nobody stole the reward that he had received after working so hard in the Ultimate Championship. But what was the use of all of this? Why not just say that it needed to be dissolved in a special liquid? The procedures are not for nothing. The hot water is used to activate the properties of some of the ingredients that are used. Then, the freezing will also activate another property. Melting the ice cube before warming it to room temperature will make sure that all the properties are merged. So, the recipe is incomplete. Jack guessed. Without the prescription, it can be said to be incomplete. Jack shook his head and decided to focus on what could be done at the moment. To make sure that the effects of the pills are maximized, the one that takes the solution has to make sure that she does intense workout. In this way, the cells in the body will be active in the absorption of the pill properties. That was the last sentence on the 2 paragraphs long prescription. After he was done with it, Jack decided to test it. He had come with all the pills that were produced in the first batch. There was a total of 216 pills. According to Walter, they had produced 250 pills in the first batch. All the others were used for the testing that led to a failure. The 216 pills, if he divided 2 per person, he could strengthen 108 people. Thinking of the squads that were supposed to be formed, Jack clicked his tongue just thinking of the number of people that would be stronger than the normal human adults. To test the effect of the pills, Jack decided to test them on Jonathan. He was currently in a weakened state. Perhaps the pills could help him with that. But currently, Jack had a problem. How was he going to measure 10 milliliters of water? Considering that he was currently in a hotel room and not in the laboratory, there was nothing that he could use. After thinking again, he simply decided to buy a measuring cylinder. It took him about half an hour to find a store that sold the laboratory apparatus. All the same, having another idea, Jack decided to buy an even bigger measuring cylinder, a beaker, 50 small glass bottles, and a dropper. When he got back to his room, he began the trial. He followed the steps and finally, after more than an hour, he had completed the preparation of the solution. He went to the living room of the suite and called for Jonathan. This guy was simply playing games instead of doing something constructive. Jack then gave him a small glass bottle that contained the body-strengthening solution. Jonathan took it and looked at the small amount of colorless liquid in the bottle. He wondered what it was. He opened the cap and took a whiff, but he couldn't smell anything. Why are you acting like a cat, trying to smell something before taking it? Drink it already, Jack complained. Hey, I don't know what this thing is. So, why would I simply take it? Jonathan looked at Jack with a dissatisfied expression. You have to drink it because I'm the one that gave it to you, Jack stated with a straight face. Looking at Jack's expression, Jonathan became serious. What is this thing anyway? Body strengthening solution, Jack replied without hiding a thing. Hey, you mean that this is the solution of the same pill that you carried from the lab? Hasn't this thing been ineffective? Or are you trying to use me as a lab rat? Jonathan looked at Jack with a strange expression on his face. Just take it. If you don't want, you might as well give it back to me so that I can give it to another person who knows how to appreciate other people's kindness. Jack snorted as he stretched his hand to take the bottle away from Jonathan. Jonathan reacted fast and gulped the small amount of liquid in the bottle. And not long after that, he felt a warm current rushing through his body. He was just about to question what was happening when he suddenly felt that the strange poison that was previously restricting his strength being destroyed. What followed that was that he felt that his strength was returning to him. What surprised him the most was the fact that not only had his strength returned to the peak, it had also been greatly enhanced. This showed him that the solution that he had taken wasn't something simple. He clenched his fists to test his strength. Feeling the explosive power that was hiding in his muscles, Jonathan felt that he could crush a military armored car with a single punch. He was feeling restless. He really wanted to vent his excess energy. Still, he managed to suppress the feeling. He looked at Jack and asked, "How come it's now functioning now? Could it be that you have found the solution?" Jack nodded. "It's already solved. So, how are you feeling? Any abnormality?" Jack asked. "You are strange," Jonathan stated, making Jack fail to understand what he was meaning. "As for the abnormality, I feel like I can fight 1,000 men right now. I have completely recovered, and now, what is left is to try the strength. As of now, compared to an adult, how many times stronger do you think you are now?" Jack asked. He wanted to know by what degree the solution increased a person's strength. "I feel like I'm 3.5 men combined," Jonathan stated. "You should try to practice. There should be a good amount of the energy of the solution that has yet to be absorbed by your body. So, you should try doing something intense," Jack suggested. "MMH, how about fighting you?" Jonathan asked as he looked at Jack. He wanted to know just how strong Jack was. "If we fight, you are no match for me at all." So, the fight will be boring. Jack shook his head and refused. It wasn't that he was bragging. Instead, he was saying the truth. While Jonathan was 3.5 men combined, Jack was 5 adults combined. You are actually looking down on me? You don't dare to fight me? Jonathan looked at Jack with a displeased expression. Being told that he couldn't fight Jack when he hadn't even tried was something that he couldn't accept. Every man had his own pride. Seeing that Jonathan seemed not to believe him, Jack shook his head helplessly. He decided to have a fight with him. In this way, he can make sure that Jonathan can fully absorb the energy present in his body. Additionally, he might as well use this chance to teach him a good lesson. After all, this guy had been provoking him over and over again. Why not fight on the roof of the hotel? Jack suggested. Seeing that Jack had agreed, Jonathan snorted before walking towards the door. Jack silently followed behind him. When they got to the roof, Jack and Jonathan stood 10 meters apart. They had each other's movements locked in that they would be able to react as long as one of them made a move. Getting impatient, Jonathan made the first move. Currently, he was so confident that he could beat Jack. The energy in his body was something that needed to be vented, and Jack would be a good place where he could vent freely. He took 2 steps forward before punching. The explosive power that was contained in the punch surprised Jack a little. This was actually the first time that he was going to fight someone who was as strong as Jonathan. In any case, he wasn't worried. He lifted his right hand and easily parried away the punch. The first thing that he wanted to do was to help Jonathan completely absorb the energy. So, he decided to let Jonathan be on the offensive. Seeing that his punch was ineffective, Jonathan threw another one. But just like before, Jack easily parried it to the side. This made Jonathan feel like his pride was being challenged. So, he began throwing one punch after the other, not giving Jack time to relax. He increased the speed and power behind each punch. But for some reason, Jack was always able to parry his attacks. Getting frustrated, Jonathan increased the frequency of his attacks again. It was also at this point that he noticed that with each punch, his strength was increasing. And so, he forgot about not being able to hit Jack and completely focused on throwing the jabs one after the other. Jack wasn't flustered at all. He continued entertaining Jonathan more. Till now, he had yet to attack even once. Just like that, 20 minutes went by. Jonathan was already sweating from the continuous punches that he had thrown. At this point, Jack realized that Jonathan might have completely absorbed the energy. Flashing a smile, he first held the fist that came before holding the other in his other hand. Just as Jonathan was wondering why his hands were stuck, Jack used his knee to hit Jonathan in the stomach, waking him up. Being suddenly kneed in the stomach woke Jonathan out of his world. Jack released his hands and Jonathan hurriedly retreated. Now, he began focusing on the fight. Previously, he had simply been attacking, forgetting that this was a fight where he could be hit. Jack's lack of offense had made him completely submerged in the state where he only thought of attacking. Now that he could focus, he noticed that of all the punches that he had thrown, none of them had actually managed to land on Jack. Not feeling convinced, Jonathan attacked. This time, he made sure that he was ready to defend any strike that came from Jack. He threw a kick this time. Since punches didn't work, he decided to try kicking. Perhaps he would actually be able to land a hit on him. But against his expectations, Jack didn't stand there. He took a few steps backwards and evaded the kick. Jonathan, who had expected that Jack would actually parry the attack, was caught unprepared. So, the force that he had thrown the kick with made him lean to the side. At the same time, Jack made a move. Just as Jonathan was trying to gain his footing, a punch arrived, heading straight for his face. When the fist landed on his hand, he felt a great deal of pain as he was pushed backwards. He didn't expect that Jack's punch would be this strong. Although he had misjudged Jack previously, that didn't mean that he was not a fighter. Instead, he was someone that had undergone several life and death fights. So, his combat experience was high. Now that he had taken the fight serious, he dared not make a rookie mistake like the one that he had made when he tried kicking Jack. The two attacked, defended, and evaded attacks one after the other. But if there was a person that was watching the fight, they would find that Jonathan was at a great disadvantage. He was being suppressed by Jack as time went on. This was basically due to the fact that Jonathan had spent a lot of strength when he was attacking Jack at the beginning. And now, he wasn't having the same momentum as at the beginning. Jack was maintaining the strength and speed of his punches. He made sure that he didn't use much strength lest he badly injured Jonathan. Still, he enjoyed the feeling of suppressing Jonathan. This was the sense of satisfaction that came from the fact that Jonathan had been messing with him all this time, and Jack had no way of paying back. So, this was his opportunity. On the other hand, Jonathan could feel that Jack was playing with him. He felt that no matter what he did, he was bound to lose. But all the same, he was unwilling to give up. He was the one that had suggested that they had to fight. So, he wasn't going to be the first one to submit. But as time went on and more of Jack's attacks landed on him, Jonathan had no choice but to agree that he was no match for Jack. Now, both of his eyes had already turned black. The cheeks had already swollen. In other words, Jack was simply beating him up. This was not a fight at all. I have something else to do. So, goodbye, Jonathan said before he ran off. Jack, who was preparing to attack again, was stunned. He never expected that Jonathan would actually run away. What thing did he want to do? He was simply giving up, and he wasn't willing to say loud that he was admitting defeat. But at the end of it all, Jack was amazed by the strength that he had gotten from the professional combat ability. Not only was he good in terms of strength, he was also good in terms of techniques and knowledge. In other words, he was just like a person that had experienced several fights in his life. So no matter how strong Jonathan was, and no matter how many fights Jonathan had been engaged into, he would never be able to compare to Jack in terms of experience. Shaking his head, Jack decided to follow Jonathan back into the suite. Since he had already tested the efficiency of the body-straightening pill, he might as well start preparing the solution for the other 20 that were already here in Cardinal's Supreme Hotel. After getting back to his room, Jack used the big measuring cylinder to measure 200 milliliters of water and poured it into a beaker. After that, he took 40 body-strengthening pills and dissolved them inside it. Then, following the procedure that was in the prescription, he prepared another body-strengthening solution. After that, he measured 10 milliliters of the solution and poured it into 20 small glass bottles. With everything done, he gave Klein a call and asked him to come to pick up the solutions. About 5 minutes later, Klein arrived. Jack handed him the solution and instructed, "Each one of you will take a single bottle. Drink the solution inside and make sure that you go to train immediately after you've taken it." Although he was confused about what Jack had given him, he still decided to obey Jack's order and headed back to his room, where he called for the others to come and join him. He gave them the solution and gave them the same instruction as Jack had told him. And just like him, they too were confused, and none of them could tell what it was that Jack had given them. "Do you think that this is one of those illegal drugs that have been banned?" One of them asked. "Why do you think so?" Another asked, "Don't you think that it's strange that he gave this thing to us and said that we had to take it when we were working out?" The first guy said, "It does make sense, but what is the use of that kind of drug? I don't think that boss is that kind of person. Why would he want us to use illegal drugs?" Another guy refuted, "In any case, I trust that boss will not give us something that will end up harming us. The private team has just been formed, and considering that he said that we are of great use to him, that means that he has no intention of doing us harm." Klein stated, "That's right. Just think about it. If we think that this is a drug, we might as well quit the private team and head our own ways. It's not like he's going to force us to continue being his subordinates." The group went on to think about what Jack might be intending to do. There were some among them that were reluctant to drink the solution. But in the end, since the majority of the group had decided that they would take the solution and that they trusted Jack, this group of minority also agreed to follow. The following morning, the group went to a nearby gym. Immediately after they were ready to start working out, they each drank the solution that Jack had given them. They did this in private. At that exact moment, they felt that their strength had gotten a drastic increase. They were just normal men and women before taking the solution. But now, they were extremely strong. These guys finally understood why Jack had stated that they had to work out immediately after they had taken the solution. So, they each went ahead to do the activity that they thought would help them vent the excessive energy in their bodies. Some used the treadmill and ran at their maximum speed. Others went to the dumbbells and began lifting, and so on. In other words, they each did something that they thought they could manage. Those that were watching from the side were amazed by this group of people. They stopped practicing and focused their attention on them. Some even began recording their actions. What do these people eat? Right, do we even eat the same things? Hey, have you noticed that just one of them here can break the world record? Now that you mention it, it's true. Biggie, didn't you say that you were the strongest person in the gym? Why don't you go ahead and defend your position? Man, there are times that we have to agree that we are no match for others. Don't you know that there is always someone stronger than you? What the heck? Is that a woman? It's only now that you are noticing it? Yeah, I had simply thought that all of them are men. Who knew that there was a woman amongst them? There are two of them, not one. Why are you acting as if this is normal? My wife is like that. She always beats me up whenever we have a fight. TSK, who said that your wife is strong? It's just that you are so weak. You can't even lift the least heavy weight in the gym for 10 reps. You are talking as if you can compete against the women there. As the crowd that was watching continued to clamor on how strong the 20 men and women were, the ones that were at the center of attention were not even paying attention to them. They were now feeling their strength being elevated to a higher level. The more they worked out, the stronger they became. Furthermore, it wasn't just an increase in strength. They were also having an increase in their speed, endurance, and so on. They felt that the bones in their bodies were being strengthened as well. After over half an hour of intense workout, the group finally stopped one after the other. The group could feel that they were now tired, and the only thing that they wanted to do at that point was to get a good sleep to relax. So, without caring about the crowd that was trying to talk to them or ask them questions about how they got this strong, the group walked out of the gym. The good thing was that the gym wasn't that far from the hotel. So, they easily got back to their rooms and fell on their beds without caring that they had to take a shower first. Jack didn't know the effect of the solution on the 20. Currently, he was thinking about what he was going to do to make sure that the group would get trained. Being strong wasn't enough for the group to be part of the private team. They needed more than that. Jack decided to ask Tracy if there was someone present in the company that could train people. He didn't want just muscles. Skills were very important. So, the 20 still had to go and train their skills and how they were supposed to react in specific situations. Hello, boss. Tracy responded. How are things on your side? Jack asked. They are going well. By next week, the merging should be completed. Tracy replied. That's good. Anyway, is there anyone who is training the guards? Jack inquired. Yes. There's one that was in the army before. After he got injured, he couldn't continue staying there, and so he decided to come and do something simple. He now trains the special guards that always take on the bodyguard duties. Tracy explained. Okay, I got it. Inform him that I would like to send people for him to train them. They should be trained in all means possible. Jack stated. I'll make sure to pass the information. Tracy agreed. Okay then. They will be coming on a helicopter. You can organize and see what side requires it the most. It will be convenient for the emergency response to be moving around with the helicopter. Jack added. Tracy was pleasantly surprised that Jack was giving them a helicopter. One had to remember that all the money that they were earning during the month was actually being used by them to expand the company. That was what Jack had decided on during the previous visit. So, all the revenue that was earned during the month was used as capital that was injected into the company. She had also planned to buy a few helicopters using the money. Although it was true that they already had a few of them, it was also true that they were not enough to serve the company whose branches were spread out to other cities. Boss, we still have a good amount of money. We can use it to buy several helicopters. There's no need for you to give away your personal helicopter. Tracy tried persuading. Worry not. This helicopter is special. There will be a total of 3, but 2 of them will be delivered once the merging is completed. Jack insisted. Okay. Tracy agreed. Since Jack said that it was special, she had no choice but to agree. But in her heart, she didn't think that there was anything special with the helicopter. After all, what could be so special about it? In any case, she could only wait and see what was so special about it, and that Jack thought that it was. So, after she agreed, she asked for the number of the people that would be going to the headquarters and ended the call. Jack was now relieved that there was actually a person that could train the 20 in terms of skills. And if possible, Jack wanted to get this person who was from the army to also join a private team. It was just an injury. Jonathan's poison had been healed by the body-strengthening solution. So, Jack believed that it wasn't impossible to have the injury that he suffered to be treated as long as it wasn't losing a limb. As for whether he would join, that would depend on him and Denali. If Denali thought that he was good to join, Jack would immediately invite him to join. If he agreed to it, Jack would definitely give him the body-strengthening solution. Now, he had only spent 42 pills. There were still 174 pills remaining. What's more, there was another batch that was being produced. And once that came as well, the number of pills in his hands would be enough for him to strengthen a big number of people. The efficiency of the pills was so high. But what was up with how easy it was for them to be produced? The ingredients were very cheap and most of them were easy to find. That's how the medicine is. The ingredients are always available. It's just that people don't know that when you combine this plant and this grass you will get this effect. Furthermore, even if a person wants to try it, that person would have to start by trying to see the effect of combining two plant essence before finding the right ratio. All of this is too time-consuming. Jack nodded. This was why the research for medicine of a certain disease would sometimes take a few years, or it might as well extend to decades before the results start appearing. Jack wanted the group that had been selected by Denali to start the production of the anti-leukemia pills as soon as they completed the second batch of the body-strengthening pills. In this way, he would start getting closer to the target that he wanted. He knew that monopolizing the medicine sector would be hard. What he was expecting from this side was simply the money. The money could then be used to develop other companies that had the least competition, and he would be able to complete one of the requirements for the system upgrade. You've earned $96 million. Multiplier applied. You receive $9.6 billion. Jack was surprised by the sudden system prompt. He had not expected that there would be money coming in at this point. Now, the question was, where was the money coming from? This was the first time that the system wasn't mentioning the source of money if he wasn't the one that was actually carrying out the transaction himself. As if to answer his question, another system prompt appeared. First income from the Serenity residential area. As a reward, you gain the Eden residential building. Just then, the phone that he was still holding in his hand vibrated. Looking at the message that he had received from the bank, Jack sighed with emotion. Flyers Bank Savings account received $9.6 billion. Current balance is $26,855,924,216. He was now already halfway towards the target, $50 billion. This was actually the first sale that had occurred ever since he actually got rewarded with the Serenity residential area from the bet with Austin and Venture City. Looking at the balance in his account, Jack could see the target was approaching. He wondered who it was that had purchased the villa. In Serenity residential area, there was a total of 30 villas that were up for sale. The villas were built according to a certain pattern and the price. There were 5 of each villa with the price tag. The villas were worth $20 million, $96 million, $105 million, $118 million, $130 million. These were 25 villas. Then, there were 4 villas that were worth $190 million each. As for the last villa that Jack had thought that he would take it for himself, if there would be nobody who would have purchased it by the end of his 1-month booking, it was worth $695 million. This was the most expensive villa in the whole residential area. And now, there were 6 villas that were sold before Jack took over the residential area. The 5 that were worth $20 million, and one that was worth $96 million. Now, another purchase of a villa that was worth $96 million had been completed. Now that Jack thought about it, he was rewarded with the entire Serenity residential area. Its worth was estimated to be at least $3.8 billion. But there were already 6 buildings that had been sold. Didn't that mean that he had actually been scammed of his 6 villas? System, where's the money for my 6 villas? Who said that the 6 villas are yours? You own 24 of the 30 villas in Serenity residential area. What the heck? Wasn't he rewarded with the Serenity residential area? Why was it that he only owned some of the villas and the others weren't? Didn't that reduce the value of the property that he owned? The villas sold are not counted. The villas that were sold can amount up to $196 million. On the other hand, although those that bought the villas own them, as long as they get out of their courtyard, they are trespassing on your property. What you own are the 24 villas as well as all the other facilities that are present in the residential area. That means that even if you sell all the villas, you will still be considered the owner of the playgrounds, swimming pools, and other facilities that are available outside of the villas and the courtyards of the Serenity residential area. Jack finally calmed down. It turned out that the system wasn't scamming him of the reward that he was supposed to receive. Now, to the thing that he had just received, Eden Residential Building. Jack was still considered new in Kartu City. So, he had yet to know the names of most of the buildings in the city. The only solution for the moment would be for him to do a search and find what that building was. He found that Eden was actually a building with 50 floors. It was a 3-bedroom apartment building. Currently, it had most of the apartments occupied. And the estimated price of the whole apartment building was $1.03 billion. This was a sky-high price. In other words, although Eden Residential Building wasn't the tallest building present in the city, it was still a luxurious apartment block. Jack thought that he was getting richer and richer. He then thought of something. System, will I have a reward from the first income from the apartment?
No.
You got the Serenity residential area as a reward from the system due to the multiplication effect from the bet. In such a way, it's the income that you received. As for the Eden Residential Building, that's a reward from the system. A reward from the system doesn't give you a reward, just the income multiplier. Had it not been for the fact that Serenity residential area was for sale before it was rewarded to you, the income coming from selling it wouldn't have been multiplied. Only the income like rent would have been multiplied. So, if you sell Glaze Hotel, you will be rewarded by a first-time income reward as long as the first month hasn't gone by. But the reward that you will receive, even if you sell it, the income will not be multiplied. In other words, the system doesn't support you selling the rewards that you have been awarded with. Jack finally understood. After all, back then, although he had actually sold the building and the cars that belonged to Austin, there was no multiplier effect considering that he had already been rewarded by something that was 100 times more after he received them. Could it be that now that Shanzu wasn't there, people have finally began buying the villas or something? In any case, Jack decided that was going to pay the residential area a visit again. Just at this moment, a person knocked on the door. Not sure who it was, Jack got out of his room and opened the door. He found that Klein and the other 19 were waiting outside. The moment that they saw Jack, they all gave him a deep bow and spoke in unison. Thank you, boss, for the opportunity that you have granted us. Although he was surprised at first, when he heard their words, Jack finally realized that they were talking about the body-strengthening solution that he had given them. He waved his hand and said, "There's no need to be polite. This is one of the benefits that I had promised you guys when I was asking you to join the team. Now that you are strong, you still need some skills. So, you can go and prepare. You'll be heading to the headquarters of Good Vision Security Limited so that you can get trained." Hearing Jack's words, the group was stunned for a moment before they became ecstatic. They were just normal people who had decided to work as security guards for the Safety Enforcer Security Company. In the end, they had been chosen to join the private team. Now, not only had their salaries been increased greatly, but they were stronger than average men and were now going to be trained in terms of skills and many more. So, they were excited. Not everyone could be given such an opportunity, considering that there were 100 of them before they were selected. What's more, they didn't even know what it was that Denali looked for before choosing them. "Thank you, boss. We will be preparing now," Klein stated. "No problem. Gabriel will take you there via the helicopter. You will be training all this while unless I call for you. Your training may even take several months. In any case, you should just focus on training unless I need you to come," Jack added. After chatting the group for a while, they left. Jack then went back to the room. He was still wondering if he could get other teams to be formed, so that he can at least have them trained as early as possible. But thinking that Denali was still in Crystal City, Jack shook his head. He would have to wait for her before he could implement that idea. Just then, his phone rang. An unknown number. Receiving it, Jack spoke. "Hello, you are?" "Hello, Mr. Jackson. I'm Elvis, the manager of the Eden Residential Building. I was informed that you have taken over the building. So, I was inquiring if there are any changes that you would like to make," a man said. Thinking for a while, Jack decided that he would have to wait till Denali came, so that such a thing could happen as well. Just continue doing things normally. I will see if there are any changes that can be made later on. Okay, boss. Elvis, who was quite nervous, was happy. Although he was the one that was in charge of managing the block, that didn't imply that he couldn't be replaced. Considering that Jack had just bought the building and he didn't know him, he might replace him with another person that he trusted. So, although it was for the time being that he wasn't going to be replaced, Elvis was more than happy because he could use this opportunity to impress the new boss. After ending the call, Jack got out of the hotel. He still wanted to stroll around the city to make himself familiar. Additionally, he wanted to buy an office building here in Car2. He had wanted to have the headquarters of Jackson Enterprise in Venture City before, but looking at the bustling Car2, he decided against it. Since this was the central location of the country, Jack might as well use it as his headquarters location. In this way, he could easily access the other provinces when he was expanding the business. For him to easily find an office building that was up for sale, Jack decided to visit a real estate agency. Not long after, Jack found a famous real estate agency that was called Property Masters. He got into the building that it was located. After asking around, he found that office buildings models could be found on the 6th floor. Taking the elevator, Jack finally arrived. There, he could see that there were several buildings models here. And from the looks of it, all of them were office buildings. "Hello, sir. Would you like to rent a floor or an office?" A young man walked over to Jack and greeted him. He was one of the staff members here. "I would like to buy a building." Jack shook his head before responding. Caught off guard, the young man was silent for a moment before he reacted. "This way, sir. There are several buildings that you can buy." He was clearly more than happy to lead Jack to the building models that were for sale. Most of the people that came here mainly wanted to rent a floor or a certain number of offices. It was rare to have someone that really wanted to buy a whole building. And although Jack looked young, the young man dared not to underestimate him. This was the capital. So, there were several young masters and ladies that came over to buy buildings. Most of the times, it was that they had been entrusted by their families because they were being trained. Jack looked at the models that were present. He found that none of them was up to his taste at all. They were just average buildings, and there was nothing special about them. "Is there any big building that you guys are selling?" Jack asked. That was unexpected for the young man. Jack was wearing average clothes. He was now beginning doubting if it was true that Jack could actually afford to buy the buildings or not. Perhaps he had seen that the prices of the buildings was higher than he had expected and was just looking for a way out. But although he was doubtful, the young man still led Jack towards another part of the floor. Here, Jack could see that there were models of several skyscrapers. He nodded in satisfaction. This was what he was looking for. So, he began looking at the building models as the young man went on to introduce them to him. It wasn't just the size and design of the buildings that Jack was looking for. He wanted to get one that was located in a good position as well. Just then, an arrogant voice came from behind him. "Yo, if this isn't my cousin Jonathan." Jack's lips twitched when he heard that. It seemed that he had encountered a person that knew Jonathan. And from the tone of his voice, Jack could tell that the relationship between the two was definitely anything but good. Although this person could be said to be his cousin as well, Jack didn't think much of it. Apart from his Aunt Anita and Jonathan, Jack didn't want to interact with anyone else from the Gesta family. He wondered just how unlucky he was to encounter those people that didn't like Jonathan one after the other. He was here not long ago, but he had not encountered such a situation. Could it be that because he came with Jonathan this time, his luck had been diminished? What's even more infuriating was the fact that all the people that mistook him for Jack were not in good terms with him. Of course, that was apart from Wendy. Others, they were always wanting him dead, or like this guy whom he wasn't sure what he wanted. Ignoring him, Jack continued looking at the models of the buildings. He didn't even turn around to look at the other party's appearance at all. The other party, on the other hand, wasn't ready to let this go. He continued. "Where have you been hiding for over a year now? We have been looking around for you, but we found no traces at all. You know, I thought that you were scared of the competition and had decided to quit." The guy was making Jack want to beat him up. "What's up with you? Can't you see that I have ignored you? Why the heck do you keep on pestering me like a fly? Don't you have something else to do?" Seeing that Jack had yet to react even after all the taunting, the other party finally went silent. Jack was relieved. He went on with the selection. Finally, he found one that he liked. That is the Alpha Tower. It has 105 floors in total. It costs $2.3 billion. Each of the offices has its own rest area and bathrooms. The floor itself has an open space where people can interact. Each office is equipped with advanced level of technology in terms of lighting, recognition, voice control, and many more. The more the young man talked about the tower, the more Jack loved it. Okay, let's go and take a look. If it's good, I'll be taking it. Jack nodded before saying. The young man was so ecstatic. He had previously doubted whether Jack could actually afford the building. But when the other guy came over and claimed that Jack was his cousin, he believed it. After all, he knew who the person was. It was none other than Arthur. This guy had been here several times and had bought many villas for girls that he always came there with. So, if Jack was this guy's cousin, didn't that mean that he also had a good amount of money? Just thinking about the amount of commission that he would receive, the young man was in a hurry, wanting to lead Jack to the building as fast as possible. Ha ha ha, what did I just hear here? You? You want to buy that tower? Do you think that you can afford that price? You have been away from home for over a year now. Furthermore, even I cannot be allowed to spend such a big amount of money unless I spend it from my pocket. The person sneered. For the first time, Jack turned around and faced the other party. He found that this guy was someone who was older than him, probably 21 or 22. You are? Jack asked. He clearly didn't know this guy.